Good day, everyone. I am Aries Lynn Ocariz, a Bachelor of Physical Education third year. In this video, we will be talking about Chapter 1 Summative Assessment, Planning and Implementing Classroom Test Exams. So, the topic that I have chosen in this chapter is the planning a summative assessment. So, the first step in constructing a classroom summative assessment is to review the criteria for high quality assessments that can be found in Chapter 3. So, the following are the steps in creating a high standard quality summative assessment. First is, are there clear and appropriate learning targets? So, before you assess your students, you make sure that you know your learning objectives, your learning targets that you're aiming to achieve after you give your assessment to your students. Second is, what methods of assessment is best match. So, as a teacher, it's important to match the type of assessment that you're giving to your student to their learning abilities in order to avoid the ineffectiveness of evaluation process. Third is, will the evidence allow valid inferences? So, making inferences, especially in assessment, means to coming to a conclusion based on the evidences and reasoning, and if you're using the appropriate type of assessment to your students based on their learning capabilities and abilities, then I believe that you can get a valid conclusions and results from your assessment. Next is, how can error be minimized? So to reduce the errors or the mistakes while constructing and you're making your summative assessment, you have to do planning ahead of time. And also make sure that when you are giving your summative assessment or when you are doing your assessment, you are in a controlled environment where you can control the background noises and also the space. You can maximize the space, and also make sure that when you're doing or giving your assessment, your students are in a proper state of mind so that they can answer the assessment properly and correctly, and you can get a valid and reliable results. Next is, will the assessment be fair and biased? So, as a teacher, avoid being biased and make sure to implement fairness, especially in giving your assessment, because assessment is evaluating your students' learning capabilities, if they learn something or not, if they improve something, or if they improve or they did or they had a progress in your learning and teaching process. Next is, have students had the opportunity to learn what is being assessed? So this is very understandable and very simple because you cannot assess the things you never taught to your students. You cannot assess or evaluate or measure their learnings if you didn't taught or if you didn't teach them. So next is, will the assessment be practical and efficient? So high quality assessments are practical and efficient. So, and as a teacher, you should be familiar to the methods or types of assessment you're giving to your students, and the time required for the assessment, if the time given is enough for the types and numbers of items of your assessment. So to avoid wasting time and effort in giving your assessment, make sure that your assessments are short and concise and direct to the point. Will the assessment be aligned with the instruction? So assessment should reveal how well your students have learned and what we want them to learn, while instruction ensures that they learned it. So for this to occur, assessment Learning objectives and instructional strategies need to be closely aligned so that they reinforce one another. So lastly, are the consequences of assessment positive? So of course you're making your assessment, you're giving your assessment to have a positive feedback. So assessment provides students with effective comments, with effective feedbacks, and potentially improve their motivation and self-esteem. So for me, these are the consequences the consequences of assessment, which are positive. So example of um, summative assessment are final exams, midterm exams, or performance assessment. So that's it for the planning of summative assessment.